Hi, this is Ian, and this is my grandfather, Ben Stewart, and I'm interviewing him about his point of view in life in the 50s and 60s. So, grandfather, when were you born?
I was born in 1943 in a little place called Portsmouth, Virginia.
So what was it like living there?
Well, I'll tell you, from my early childhood days, I lived in a little old house that cost $35 a month. And I was there till about 5 years old, and we had a lot going on. And then we moved out into the country.
So what was your parents' idea for going to the country? Why did they want to go?
Well, we were in a highly congested area. And, the house that we lived in, there was probably about 10 feet between our house and the house next door. And they were concerned when they found out that I dropped the boom on a crane in the backyard where some construction work was going on, and also tried to burn down a neighbor's house when I was about 5 years old. So they said, I think we need to move into the country where there's plenty of wide open spaces.
Well, what did you do for fun in the country?
For fun? Well, one of the earliest memories I have when we lived in the country was actually going out into the woods, taking sweet potatoes out of our field, and crawling under a tent we made out of an old rug from grandmother, or your grandmother and my mother, and eating raw sweet potatoes. That was really quite a treat back in those days.
So was there any games that you and your friends used to play? Or?
Oh yeah, I mean, some of the games were sliding off the roof of our house. We were the only people that I ever knew that lived in a Quonset hut. It's a corrugated steel house that was actually made back during the Second World War. And my dad bought our homes for $250 and brought all the pieces to our house and assembled it. And it was round and corrugated steel, and you climb up the backside and slide down the front. It was great.
So what were some chores and responsibilities you had during life on the farm?
Well, during that period of time, we had hogs out in the back, and we had chickens, and we had an old cow. And the chores that I remember the most was actually going down to the back to feed the hogs. Right beside our kitchen sink, we had a 5-gallon bucket that we kept our slops in. And that was anything that you didn't eat. It was dishwater and everything else. And we would carry it back. It was probably 300 yards and feed the hogs. And the chickens, I do remember shooting one of Mother's prize chickens one day with my BB gun. And, I sighted that gun and I looked down there and I nailed that baby. I told her about it about 40 years later. She was really upset because if I told her then, she said we could have had that chicken for dinner, but I knew if I told her then, I would actually be in deep trouble.
Well, what were some concerns of yours during this time?
During this time, well, we had goats, and one of my favorite goats was Buckshot. Buckshot was a guy that would always meet me when I got off the school bus, and Buckshot was my favorite buddy. And one day I came home and he was hanging from the tree. That concerned me. My dad had harvested my goat for dinner that evening. Didn't know it was going to happen. And I can tell you, the more I chewed on Buckshot that night, the bigger that wad got in my mouth. Not a good evening. And, when we got into the 60s and I got a little older, I was about ready to be drafted into the Vietnam War. That was a concern for me. As it turned out, I was not drafted.
Why was that?
Well, I was working at the Naval Air Station in Norfolk, Virginia as an electronics journeyman. And I was working on the A-6A Intruder jets. And these were the jets that our military guys were flying throughout Vietnam and bombing, low-level attack bombers bombing in that area. So when the planes got shot up, they brought the planes back in and we fixed them up and sent them back out again. So it was seen that I was doing something that was necessary for the military at that time.
So what were some other things that you did during that time period as you were getting that job and you were working in electrics?
Well, as I was working there, I was actually, your mother was born while I was working in that job. We lived in Great Bridge, Virginia, and even prior to that, there were so many things going on, and I can remember the fun times we had as a child.
Well, back to your childhood on the farm, was there any seasonal events that you guys celebrated?
Seasonal events, absolutely. Some of the best events were at Halloween. And some of the things we did, we'd go out and trick-or-treat, and sometimes when we didn't get a treat, we would trick. And turning over outhouses was one of our favorite events. An outhouse is an outdoor bathroom for those that don't know. And you had to be careful. You didn't want to step in the hole where you tipped over the house. But we did tip a few. And also shooting wild cherries and cherry poppers we would actually shoot those, and our mailman caught us a few times, so we got in trouble from time to time. And I'll never forget the time that we were on another Halloween event. We were actually going to surprise drivers that were coming through the neighborhood. We poured kerosene across the road, and when we see the car coming, we'd light the kerosene and go across the road, and cars would stop, turn around, and go the other way.
Well, was there any other seasonal events, like maybe Christmas, or was there a holiday that really?
Oh, Christmas was a great time, and I remember one time at Christmas, I was still thinking Santa Claus was real as a child, and my brother kept reinforcing it when he heard that I was concerned that Santa may not be real. So one morning I got up, there was snow on the ground in the Tidewater area of Virginia, and on that particular morning I saw sleigh tracks, and I saw hoof prints all the way across the front yard. My brother had gone out with a rake and a broom and other things and made it appear to me as though Santa had come. Surely it had to be in the front yard, because on our curved roof he would have just slid off anyway. So another year came and went, and I felt sure Santa was for real.
Was there any memorable presents that you got?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, presents. Ian asked me about presents. My first BB gun. I remember that on Christmas morning when Mother and Dad woke up. I'd already found my BB gun. I shot holes through the screen, and every little square I tried to shoot right through the square, and the whole screen was just peppered with holes. And also there was a mirror in the living room. I shot through the Daisy air rifle box, and I didn't think the BB would go through it, but it went all the way through it and hit the mirror behind it. We still have that mirror.
Yeah, actually I saw it in the garage a few days ago.
Yeah, it's there.
There's a nice little bullet hole.
That was me.
I was wondering about that.
Then Mother's teapot, it was never the same after I shot it with my .22 rifle. Or the pitchfork handle.
Sounds like you shot up a couple things.
Well, it really wasn't my fault. I bought my gun when I was too young, so I don't have to say it was my dad's fault. No, it was really my fault. I cannot say it was anybody else's fault for my behavior.
And we still have that gun, don't we?
We do. You and I shoot it periodically, yes.
And how much did that thing cost you when you bought it?
When I bought it from Cook's Hardware Store in Great Bridge, Virginia, it was about just under $13. Just a phenomenal buy, and still works today. Almost, what? Yeah, it's over 50 years old.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, on a closing note, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well,
anything else that
a lot of things. So many stories. If I can ever help you in any way, son, just let me know.
Okay. And is there any stories you'd like to share?
Well, there are a few. Like the time I shot my brother. Well, I only shot him with a bow and arrow. I had a 60-pound bow. I pulled back on that thing. I let it rip. I told Robert, I said, Robert, slow down. Wait for me. And he wouldn't.
Tape has reached the end. Oh, great. Well, the tape ran out, so...
Oh, we'll see.
Okay, I'm going to quit recording.